11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com. All right, welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, where we talk about Second Amendment and what it protects. However, we don't do this nightly anymore, so just trying to remember that from the old days. I think I have this figured out to start this at midnight Eastern tonight, but give me some feedback. Let me find out. So I kind of screwed this up by having it set up for 9 p.m. my time, and just changed it here when I figured out that I had made the mistake. So we do this live on Fridays. We go live to take a look at what happened in the week, mostly on YouTube, but all over the place. We do this regularly every single Friday. We've been doing it for quite a few years now. The idea is to summarize everything that's gone on for the people that were busy, for the people that were just confused or trying to make heads or tails out of it. Some weeks it's so much stuff going on. Also to archive it, to keep a list going. So if you do need to jump back and refresh memory or compare something or figure something out, it's just another resource out there that's created, consistently every week. And then the last reason, or one of the big reasons, is the stuff that we focus on isn't necessarily the headlines or the big deals each week. Instead, it is the stuff that matters, the stuff of value. And one of my goals as a web person, somebody who's been using the internet for a long time, is to help create some of that infrastructure and some of those reciprocal links, some of those posts on different platforms to help out these people, projects, issues, campaigns, things that we're focusing on each week. Part of the goal is to put that stuff on as many places on the internet as possible. So what we're going to do this week, since I've been super busy, is quit looking at the puppy here in a minute. We got our puppy right now for everybody listening as a podcast. But we're going to screen share. And we'll take one. I'm looking at the wrong screen here. I got to move my stuff around. I'm looking at the wrong screens. So we're going to take a look at what we've been looking at this week. And as we go along, we'll add some perspective and some commentary. We do this live, so thanks to everybody who's joining us live. We'll say hey to everybody here in a bit. And again, everybody that was able to find us throughout our adventures in scheduling today. So we do this live, but this is really a podcast, and most of the people that are going to listen to this are listening as a podcast. So I'll try to explain what's happening on the screen as much as possible, and describe what's on the screen as much as possible. And we're looking forward to your feedback. Even if it's coming as a podcast listener in the future, you're still part of the show. Feel free to leave some feedback, leave a comment. It gets to us. We read everything. So that way you can participate, just with a delayed time response. Of course, that'll be incorporated into future discussions, so you'll be part of what we're doing here. David's saying hello from Arizona. New name there. Welcome. So we're also in Arizona, if you didn't know. So we're going to we shared screens here. Now we're going to bring up, well, I guess this is the show. We're watching the show, watch the show. But what I'm going to dig into is my channel's history, the stuff that I've been watching this week. Normally, this is essentially how I build the show, or at least I get the skeleton, the nuts and bolts of the show, and then I edit it a little bit. But since I've been what's going on here? Since I've been pretty busy this week on a separate project, we're going to use my history as a kind of a rough draft of today's show. Now, normally, if we go into the description of this video and take a look at it, normally I've got kind of the outline here. Normally, we post this description, the list that we're about to go through here. I list it all out and I post it here on YouTube, and that's okay. We get some format issues. I don't really like it, but you can only have 2,000 characters, for example, so it's limited. So we post it over on our Patreon, and our Patreon, we'll talk about it, is a way for people to subscribe to our projects, a way to help support what we do financially as a capitalist. We appreciate that. It's the way that we're able to keep our 3 servers running and the various software that we run. It's not a lot, but the software that we run. And then we run some other software packages to do things like distribute the podcasts and stuff like that. And all that has costs, and I'm not independently wealthy at all. So the Patreon's subscriptions help pay for all of that and a little bit more. So our goal is to grow and do more than like what we used to do again. So our Patreons allow us to do that. So our Patreon is also our blog, and that's where we post all the same information, actually a little bit more usually, and with some actual formatting. So it's actually interesting to look at. It's so bland over here on YouTube because they give us no formatting options. In addition, we posted over at our Substack, which is another version of a blog that you can subscribe to. And then we post it as a newsletter as often as possible. It's actually the most difficult, most labor-intensive piece of this whole thing. So that's the one that gets kicked to the curb most often. But those are people that receive all this information via email. And then, of course, we put it on Instagram. We put it on Minds. We have an account on Locals, MeWe, a bunch of different platforms out there that we post all this on. And normally it would be a list of videos, a list of projects, a list of people that are doing stuff that is important to what our Second Amendment protects. And that's the goal, is to get those links out to as many places, in front of as many eyeballs as possible, but also in front of as many robots and logarithms as possible to help them out and to help out their causes. All right, so like I say, that's the typical. Then we'll dig through and use our history for the week to chat about what's been going on this week. Of course, there's always distractions. There's always people, trying to worry about news of the day. I don't worry too much about that. This is an alternative to that. Shouldn't be reading notes as I'm talking here. So let's dig in. So I guess we have our own show here. I guess we have to watch that to see it. So that's it. Watching ourselves there. But the last thing I guess I watched was a chunk of this weekend's episode of Gun Owners Radio, which is San Diego gun owners, or local, like actually it's a local, less than state level, smaller than state level. It's a Southern California gun owners' rights organization, and they host a radio show each Sunday that's fun to listen to. It's about 2 hours long. They stream it live, and they usually take it down. And then edit it into a bunch of different shows. So I'm really not sure what this is. I think they took it down and they chopped it up, and this is an hour and a half chunk of it. I was listening in because I really wanted to hear how Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Cooper, how he had changed the face of defensive handgun techniques. I find the evolution of firearms training pretty interesting, especially people that pay attention to it and look at it's all written down. So you can actually watch the development and the evolution of it from person to person for quite a while, especially in those early days when there wasn't as many branches on the tree. So I was really hoping to get, hear that, but I never did. They were kind of chatting about watches and other stuff, and I had to do other things, so I quit listening. I might go back in and try to find that because it is interesting. But this is a show that if I'm around on Sunday, I do listen to it. I recommend it. It's worth listening to. Now, another radio show that's worth listening to is Come and Talk It, and that's a show out of Austin, Texas. We've been listening to that one since Yoder, Texas, a channel on YouTube years ago. Years ago, used to post links to it when it was just a radio show, and you'd have to go listen from the radio station's feed back in the day. And we would get an audio feed from the radio station of the radio show from the gun shop. And we were listening to that back in 2018, maybe even 2017. I forget when we started listening to that. But almost every Sunday, we would listen to that one as a group. And now that it's on YouTube, you can watch it. It's kind of intermittent now. I don't know if they're not doing the podcast as much or if they're not doing the show as much, but that's available on Wednesdays now. But because they're not doing it as regular as they were, they do post some separate videos. Now, Michael Cargill, the host of the show and the owner of the gun shop, is also the one who sued the ATF back in 2017 for the bump stock ruling. And we all know what happened with that this week. So this was a great, this week was obviously a lot of focus on, the Cargill case. But so Michael Cargill posted this 5-minute video with a really good explanation of why he started the case, even when at a time people told him it's a waste of time and you're just one guy in Texas. What are you going to do about it? Well, he took it to the Supreme Court, and he's essentially, for the next 2 years, freed up that infringement and gone a long way towards challenging the ATF's casual interpretation or casual enforcement, I guess, of their own laws. So awesome. It's really cool to be able to see all that happen. It's not necessarily in slow motion, but it's happening over a long time frame. But it's been super neat, and that's not quite the conclusion, but it's certainly an interesting turn in our favor recently here, or just this week. So then there's a short from the Come and Talk It radio show there I must have watched. See, we have the next one in the list is Gun Freedom Radio. They chatted with Mark Victor up in Phoenix. Both of them, people I support. They're here in Arizona. Gun Freedom Radio is Cheryl Todd and her husband, Danny Todd, and they do the occasional interviews with Second Amendment activists and political folks. And they do a really good job of bringing things up that people are not familiar with and getting people in touch with each other. So Mark Victor is an attorney here in Arizona who's an advocate of people with firearms and freedom. And he's got a couple of interesting campaigns going. So it was great to check that out. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I'm sure it's a good interview. Next up, we have speaking of attorneys, the Armed Attorneys, a YouTube channel out of Texas, who does a bunch of videos on the regular, and they do premieres that one of the attorneys will monitor. So although it's not a live show, it's the next best thing. It's a prepared video that they post at a specific time with a live host watching the text chat. And it's pretty interesting, and they do pay attention to the people that show up and get some interactivity. It's an interesting channel, and it's good to hear their interpretation of what's going on with the braces. We got Reagan. I don't know if I can play this or not, but we're going to anyway.
Hi, Mark Barnett, Sandy Hook Promise here.
Please.
When the gunman shot his wife...
Yeah, well, it's called a murder, you asshole. So this is Reagan speaking in 1986.
Ceremony commemorating the founding of the Marine Corps 211 years ago. But I wish I could be with every Marine today to say how grateful America is for all that the Marines have given over the years and give today in the defense of freedom. Yes, in these 211 years, whenever America has called, the few and the proud have been there. In places with names like Bellewood, the Argonne Forest, Guadalcanal, Saipan, Okinawa, Petrosin Reservoir, Quezon, and Grenada, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. The men of the United States Marine Corps have fought with a consistency of courage and skill unparalleled in the history of man. Everywhere they've landed, those of the Eagle, the Globe, and the Anchor have taken with them a spirit that all the world knows today and respects. As Ernie Pyle, the legendary World War II war correspondent, wrote, "The source of that spirit is that a Marine just plain considers himself a better soldier than anybody else. And he might have added, the Marines have never given anyone any reason to think differently. The Marines have always hit the beaches hard. They never leave their men on the battlefield. And let me just say, that's not only a Marine tradition. In Southeast Asia, we will write no final chapters. We will close no books.
All right. It's a 3-minute speech, and I'm going to leave it there because I don't know why Reagan kind of goes off on a tangent here for a while, talking about POWs in Southeast Asia. So I'm trying to remember back in 86 if I know that's pretty much when the POW MIA thing either started or was really hitting. So it must have been either a sore spot or a preventative thing. But he definitely goes off for a while. But again, it's the, that was 18 years ago? It's like the 286th birthday now or something. So, the Marines are, but they're pretty much dudes who literally sign up to go catch bullets, and it takes a certain type of person to be even interested in that, being willing to accept it, to work fucking hard to do it, and then they go do it. Like, they go do that stuff constantly. So they don't get much, and they don't, but they aren't given much in terms of support or resources, but a lot is expected of them. And pretty much most of the time, if not all the time, well, I can't say all the time, nothing's perfect, but pretty much most of the time, you get what you expect from Marines, which is, the job to get done. So everybody's saying happy birthday to them. It's happy birthday to the Marines. They started off in a bar, getting all rowdy, and a little while after the Army did their thing, the Marines started doing their thing. So they're good little brothers to have. I always post the no better friend, no worse enemy. That's what I usually post on their birthday. Give me some feedback. Is the audio still working? I know my audio cuts out, and I got Snorri here snoring. Let's see. Then we got the Four Boxes Diner talking about one of the decisions with the Rahimi situation. So we have quite a few things on the radar right now. Bump stocks, frames and receivers, Rahimi. So lots of stuff happening in our realm. Thanks for the feedback. So again, thanks to David from Arizona joining us. Kingpin is out there, was out there a while ago. And then Woods is out there. Don't know if you're out there until you say something. So thanks for saying hey. Let's see. Yesterday, going back in time here, then we did a show on Wednesday, actually, where we do the same thing. We go back and look at the week, but we do it on Instagram. Different people on Instagram, different issues. They're definitely addressing it in different ways. The national level gun owners' rights groups use the different formats differently. So I like paying attention to each of those ways that they send information out, each of the ways that they send out content to kind of monitor and keep your finger on the pulse, so to speak. I was digging around. I don't know how this one came up, but 10 cool things to do on a road trip to Tulsa, Oklahoma. That came up because I think off air, Gizzard and Snob were talking about going to Tulsa because everybody's going. Well, some people are going to Tulsa this weekend for the Wanamaker Gun Show. And for a number of years, I think 2018 to 2021, maybe, there were a group of people from gun channels who would show up at Wanamaker and show up as media, get media passes, and do a pretty consistent collaborative effort to show off the show, kind of inform people about the show, but then also review some of the stuff and the people and the things that happen at the show, some of the booths and some of the products and things like that. So for a number of years, that was one of the things that glued gun channels together, or that brought gun channels members together. Gun channels was probably hundreds of people, if not thousands technically, but hundreds of people that participated on the regular. And there was many groups and many things that were, divided by interest, age, region of the country, what kind of firearms they liked, how they liked to chat. Some people like to chat when they're all drunk and sloppy, and other people like to constantly be getting work done. There's people all in between all these different extremes. So gun channels was one of the ways that people got together from these different realms and managed to work together on things that were important, but also would get together in places like Tulsa, places like, well, all kinds of places, SHOT Show, some of the other events that happen each year, but then just other things as well, get-togethers and things. So, again, it was a neat experience, and it was cool to see the people getting together for a reason that wasn't a rally, and it wasn't to do business, and it wasn't just for no reason. And it wasn't quite activism, but it was certainly neat. So with that being said, that's probably an episode of the podcast, unless it was some kind of special event. Every once in a while, we would go live at Wanamaker. So, we could kind of let people who weren't there, see what's happening and see people with their hair down or getting together. And then kind of as we were planning and stuff. So this might have been, and I always was an advocate for having people show up for more than just the show. There's a couple of people that just think of it as business and they show up and they just do their thing and they leave. It's very matter of fact, very business-like. It's all about the numbers and money. And then other people show up and don't even hardly care about buying a gun there. They're just showing up to hang out. So for a number of years, one of the things people would do is show up early and go shooting, show up early and go visit one of the attractions in the area, show up early and just hang out. So I was a big advocate of that. And I think I was probably, more than likely, odds are, I was probably trying to, in this show, this hour and a half or whatever, probably trying to show people some of the things you can do in the Tulsa area. There's all kinds of gun-related stuff, all kinds of U.S. history-related stuff, all kinds of just interesting things to do in that area. Probably trying to get people to show up for more than just the nuts and bolts of the show. With that being said, it is what it is, and we'll continue to watch everything evolve. And there are still people there covering the show. They're just not all doing it as a group. Woods is saying there were definitely cliques, but none were exclusionatory. Yeah, exactly. Everybody kind of overlapped, whatever those circles are called. That Alex, welcome. All right, so then the next thing I watched was the Arizona Wildlife Views. This is awesome. This is about a half an hour. Yeah, it says 30 minutes of essentially it's our game and fish department, our state level game and fish wildlife management group. Well, part of the bureaucracy. And their goal or their job is to monitor and help the wildlife here in Arizona. So they used to do a show on cable. Now they do it on the internet. Episode 9 of it. And it's pretty neat. It's pretty awesome. In this episode, they talk about some frogs that they found up kind of by Las Vegas and how much effort they're putting into getting this spring kind of near the Grand Canyon that got kind of destroyed back in the old days. Well, back in pretty much it always had been destroyed a little bit and then got more and more destroyed over time till it was finally just, not what it used to be. So they went through and wildernessed it, makes it so you can't go near it with any kind of machines or anything, and got rid of all the critters they didn't want there and put all the critters that they wanted there, and they're monitoring of that now. And it's always interesting to see. Then you got, what else was there? Some stuff about birds. Yeah, this guy was catching hawks and falcons and stuff. Pretty neat to see how they use a live pigeon to catch the wild raptors and stuff. So a pretty awesome episode, worth watching. On Tuesdays, or I guess on Tuesday, Ghost, I don't know when he recorded this. The other day it came out. Ghost hosts this Jarhead podcast once in a while, and he had on some YouTuber. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched a chunk of it. It's pretty interesting. Let's see. Clover had his last podcast where he's talking to somebody from an AR company. He does a number of podcasts each year and does them in two parts or two halves, I guess. So this was the end of his second season. Wood says they're bringing back grizzlies to the North Cascades. I'm a big fan of Predator, so I'm a big advocate of Predator repopulation. I know people can't handle that, but I can. So let's see. Then we had Tony on with Crump, Tony Simon on with Crump, kicking some kind of alligator. I was waiting for the alligator karate, but I never did see any kind of alligator karate happening. But that's pretty epic situation going on there. Somebody just karate chopping an alligator. I don't know how that alligator got up in the air, but imagine I would karate chop an alligator that was up on its hind legs also. I don't know why, but it's showing up with that Second Amendment or our 2A on Instagram show again. But as I mentioned, we do that on Wednesday. Now we do that on Wednesday before Cape Gunworks goes live with their rapid fire radio. Now this week they changed rapid fire radio to Thursday, so I wasn't able to catch it. But normally Toby, the co-owner of the shop, goes live for a couple hours, an hour with just kind of news of the day and chatting to the people that are showing up live and talking about the issues and maybe the gun of the day and things like that. And then the second hour, he brings on a guest to have a long format interview, conversation. And often he brings back somebody who's been on the show before. And that can really be fun because they don't have to introduce each other anymore. They can just chat about whatever it is, either the topic of the day is or what the guest is, passionate about. So, of course, this week or this recently, their issues have been focused on the pretty heinous amount of gun grab that's happening in Massachusetts and the frustration of those aware dealing with the apathy of those who, it's hard to say what they don't care, they don't know, they don't think it's a big deal, whatever the apathy is caused by. Watching, dealing with the, being part of the community with people who are frustrated by that apathy is never easy. And unfortunately, it's not something that we have mastered or conquered to how to deal with it. I don't know of any plans or any recipes on dealing with that apathy. So it's utterly frustrating to watch people struggle. We've all watched people struggle in Washington. We've all watched people struggle in Oregon, of course, in California, New York, right? We're just numb to the California and New York, which is unfair to both of the populations of those states. Massachusetts, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, states just get wailed on. And we, because they've been wailed on for so long, a lot of people feel like there's nothing that can be done, which is a shame because it's not the truth. There's lots of things that can be done. We all have family, friends, businesses, projects, things that we are associated with, things that we purchase from, states. So these states are all interconnected and we are part of that interconnectivity. So we really do have a lot of untapped power, and it's frustrating to have watched over the years now so many people get, kind of forced to deal with the apathy in their states. And, anyway, so it's, ultimately interesting to have been paying attention to the Cape Gunworks Rapid Fire Radio Show, unfortunately, because of all the situation that they're dealing with. Toby's resolve and his dedication to this whole thing is shining through. So it's interesting and it's a pleasure to watch, but unfortunately it's caused by heinous bullshit. So I'm just watching this other show on Wednesday where he's talking about doing the show on Thursday. And there's my Instagram show again. That's probably the Instagram show from the week before that I used to copy and paste all the boilerplate out of. Now I was watching Meet the Pressers, which is Matt and the other guy who interviewed 4 people from GOAL, the Gun Owners Action League in Massachusetts. So again, Massachusetts is dealing with all this heinous infringement shit, and how they're dealing with it is, well, it's the way they're dealing with it. It's different than the way other states have dealt with it, but it's similar. They have similar things. They're dealing with it uniquely, but they're, there's a number of ways that it can be dealt with, and they're experiencing, their combination of those things. So it's interesting. This was a great conversation. It wasn't all down in the dumps. It wasn't all pessimistic. It wasn't overly optimistic. It was I think, a fairly realistic and more than interesting. Like, I don't want to say eye-opening, but there was definitely stuff that you learned from watching this one. I'd recommend it. Then Gun Owners Radio had Sandra Richardson on, who I guess was victim of the New York SAFE Act, and I didn't listen to that one, but I'm always a fan of Gun Owners Radio, so it's good or Gun Freedom Radio, excuse me. I'm glad to see that they're hosting shows again. With Cheryl's busy schedule, I'm sure it's difficult for them to regularly schedule shows. Oh, you're talking about the grizzly bears. 200. That's a bitty big number of grizzly bears. I'm sure there's people freaking out about that. People are definitely afraid of predators. Let's see. Then we got the American Suppressor Association's policy update. You got to listen to it. Not enough of the national level organizations offer a succinct update monthly, and not enough of the organizations are focused on anything that they could summarize. Let's put it that way, right? So it is worthwhile listening. However, man, I just don't like how much they're willing, like they'd rather have, I don't want to say rather, they're willing to have conversations about the electronic 4473s, where I'd much rather have only discussions about removing the 4473. But I guess I understand the strategy and the tactic of working within the system at the same time as you're trying to remove the system, but it's frustrating to watch them work with the system for sure. Then we got Chris from 740, friends up in Ohio, and he was doing a range review with some bullets. I don't watch everything out there, but if I'm going to watch something, Chris does good video. I like watching his stuff. If I'm going to watch gun stuff. We've got Four Boxes Diner, again, talking about Rahimi. That might be that same video. Well, I'm yawning, so guess what that means? We're going to take a break and take another commercial break over here. We also have shirts if you want to participate in what we're doing. Most of our shirts, I think, have like a $5 markup. So it gives us a $5 bill, which is nice. We do appreciate that. I use that to pay for bills. But the other advantage of buying a t-shirt is that I don't have to ship nothing. It gets shipped to you right away. And it's something you can wear. If you wear it in a video, or if you use an Instagram picture or something and you got one of our shirts on, or one of our products in any kind of picture that you take, let us know. And we'd be more than happy to hook you up next time you order something at our store.
Hey, did you know that you could help support our future projects and let everyone know you're a fan of what we do? Check out our print-on-demand store. We have a tab here on YouTube. When you click on it, you can choose from a bunch of different items. We have shirts and posters and coffee mugs. Click on the one you like. When you find the design you want to put on it, choose a color and a size if it's appropriate. And when you purchase these items, a portion goes to help fund our future projects. We really do appreciate your support. You get some cool stuff. When you get that stuff, post pictures here and on other platforms, and we'll hook you up next time you order from our Gear website store. Thank you for your support of gunwebsites.com.
All right, that gives me a chance to take a breather, or drink some coffee. Okay, so that gets us to Crump talking about Rahimi. Looks like Woods is a big fan of it. He says it's a great idea. Real predators keep nature in balance. Yeah, that's what I'm all about. Let's see. Then we've got... on Tuesday mornings, we do a chat coaching show. We started off talking about SHOT Show and things, related to going to SHOT Show and things like that. But ended up just being more of a coaching show for general content creators who are focused on Second Amendment. And we've been doing that every Tuesday now for over a year. And since most of the time we're talking about content creation, it's basics. I've been doing a 9-part series on advanced topics. So this last week we talked, essentially we were talking about advanced tactics, and I think we ended up talking about like one thing the whole time. I'm trying to remember what that even was, but It's been a busy week. But I think what we'll end up doing, there's like 3 pieces to that topic, and we got stuck on the first one for the whole show, and it was kind of worth it. So we kind of went on some tangents and stayed on that one part. So next week we'll probably go back and do SHOT Show stuff again. And then the week after we'll pick up on this advanced tactics again and go after those last 2 bullet points. But it's been fun chatting with people, even if it's not something that you're up to yet or you're able to deal with yet. Some of the stuff we're talking about, I think it's neat talking about it so that people know, what's available. You might be working off of this page of the recipe book, but every once in a while it's neat to take a peek at the other pages, even if you aren't cooking that stuff, just to see what other stuff can be cooked, if that makes sense. So that's our Tuesday morning show. We do that in the mornings, mainly so that I can recommend everybody hang out over at the 2A Tuesday segment of the Grace Curley Show, again with Cape Gunworks. So we started doing that show so that we could kind of be the warm-up for the 2A Tuesday segment each week and send people over to it. Then moving on to Sisters in Arms, they had their 18th show. This time they had Derek on from Kids Safe Foundation. Pretty interesting conversation. The 2 ladies from Connecticut and Massachusetts, and Derek from Oregon, talking about all the different ways that education with kids can help with both the kids themselves, safety, and kind of gun normalization. Gunmetal guy joining us. Good evening. Got Jive Turkey. So Rogue Call was out there. A bunch of excuses why he wasn't catching a deer. But, if you got to make a bunch of videos to tell people why you couldn't catch a deer, it's no big deal. Some of us just don't catch a deer, don't talk about it. So I've been listening to a bunch of different military radio shows, military interview shows. Some of them are live and some of them are recorded. Where did I listen to? So the one I first started listening to, because I didn't have any interest in listening to military interview shows, and then I started listening to Mic Drop. It's a Navy SEAL who is a dog handler. So now that he's out of the Navy, he is rehabilitating military dogs. And then those that are appropriate, he finds homes for them, rehomes the military dogs, mostly with soldiers. And then additionally, he started doing a podcast, and he calls it Mic Drop. And I started listening to that a while back now. And it really got me hooked, because you'd think listening to military interviews, it's going to be all about Humvees and M16s. And there I was. And there's a bit of that, but it's also their origin stories, with Mike, it's Mic Drop. It is their morning routines, their diet, their exercise programs, if they've got this stuff and they're interested in talking about it. But these types of topics, in addition, what they've done when they got out, how they transitioned, how they've dealt with civilian life. And depending on what you do or what you did or that kind of thing, how you grew up, how you got into it, a lot of people join the military, no matter what your role in the military. People join the military, and it's often, probably more often than not, the first time they've ever left home, the first time they've ever left their city, maybe, a lot of them, the first time they've ever left their state, a bunch of them, and the first time they've just experienced the rest of the country. So for people that haven't experienced that before, try to put yourself in the shoes of someone who, as a young person, for whatever, either, patriotic reasons or financial reasons or some other reason, very early in your life, you join the military and you become part of that world. And then decades later as an adult, so you go in as a young kid, really, and you come out decades later as an adult of some sort with all these experiences and a bit of, job education. But that's the first time you're hitting society. The rest of people go, they're teenagers, and then they maybe go to college or something. Maybe they get a first job, or, maybe they travel the country or something. But most people integrate into society in a way that's much different than soldiers who, again, go in and spend almost their exclusive amount of their time with other soldiers on a boat, in a barrack, in a a tent, whatever it might be. They're going to be with other people like themselves and get very little contact other than with those others, and they kind of lose their ability to deal with society and stuff sometimes. They definitely lose their interest in the typical day to day, and your perspective just gets changed. So anyway, listening to these interviews was super eye opening. It was so much more than listening to what I thought it was going to be. So that got me started on listening to a couple more. Some of the people that were guests on the Mic Drop Show do their own podcasts, and I started to listen to a couple other podcasts, and I found out that the interviewers, the people who ask the questions, about what questions they ask, the format of the show, some of them are live, some of them are recorded, some of them are, and they're focused on different things. And so I started watching quite a number of them. And I was watching Mic Drop the other day, and they had this guy on, Drago, who is a SEAL. He's an old guy. He's older than us. He's a 60-year-old something SEAL. And he grew up. He was born in Poland. He grew up in socialism in Poland, and he ended up going to jail by, the socialists threw him in jail for not representing the party well enough or something. And he was a political prisoner for a number of years in Poland. In Polish prison. When as soon as he got out, he went to the embassy at the United States and said, "Hey, I want to leave." And they were like, "Okay," hooked him up with a church in Memphis that brought him over and started giving him jobs and letting him learn English. And not too long after that, Iraqi war started, and he joined. He went and joined the Navy and then became a SEAL, and he was a career SEAL from that point on. And he's done all kinds of interesting things, and now out has created a couple of foundations. One of the reasons he was thrown into prison in Poland was for creating a newsletter to inform people as to what the party was really doing, or what the party was doing. And now in the United States, he sees the social platforms as being intolerant to free speech or free discussion. So he's got some interesting projects as, with his experience with that whole communication and free speech thing. So anyway, a very interesting podcast on Mic Drop. The only problem was it was part 1 of 2. So I listened to about 2-3 hours of that podcast. I knew there was not going to be another conclusion to that until next week. So I looked around and I found that Drago has been on quite a few other podcasts, including Jocko. So I don't listen to every Jocko podcast. They're too long. They're 3 or 4 hours long. So if I listen to a Jocko podcast, it's usually somebody who I want to listen to. I like Jocko just fine. I don't mind listening to any of them, just that they're so long. It's too big a chunk of time for my available time I have. It would take the spot of 2 or 3 other shows. So anyway, I only listen to the Jocko podcast when it's somebody I really want to listen to. And then I value him a lot because in this case, Jocko, he has 2 interviews, 2 5-hour interviews I listened to this week. So that's 10 hours of listening to Jocko and Drago talk. Pretty fun. So again, the first interview is just sort of a conversation. And these guys work together. They were on the same platoons a couple of times. But the second conversation is over his book. And anyway, you don't have to listen to these if you don't want to, but certainly an interesting story. Poland is a unique country. They kind of got stepped on by the Soviets, but they didn't like it. They're kind of like the Czechoslovakians, from what I understand. They didn't really like it. They became socialists, but they grit their teeth to do it. So a bunch of people hated it and worked against it and eventually got rid of it. In fact, got rid of it to the point where I think that helped kill the Soviet Union, right? When Solidarity happened in Poland, it sort of let the other states that were under, what was that called? The other Soviet states to kind of say, hey, wait, yeah, fuck you, Soviet Union. So anyhow, then I was doing, I don't know how this one came up. I think I was doing the Rogue Warrior show earlier this week, and I played the Charlie Beckworth interview from Johnny Rowland. So not the best interview or nothing, but it is an interesting insight to see what Charlie Beckworth was like later on in his life. Of course, if you're not familiar, he's the guy that started Delta Force back in the olden days, which is the Army hostage rescue team. So, and kind of the beginning of the special operations, which is, there's the Army, there's the Navy, there's the Air Force, Coast Guard. And then at some point they decided, since they kept making special units in each of these branches of the military, why don't we just make a new branch called Special Operations and take all the special units from each of these branches and put them in their own place called Special Operations? And that's when you see patches with a gold border or gold in them, or yellow, I guess. That's usually the Special Operations units, and those kind of all got put into Special Operations. And I think, from what I understand, Delta was one of the larger entities into that realm. That's when the military started saying, you know what, let's just make this its own unit. So it doesn't get as much attention as some of the others, and then now they have Space Force, I guess. But it is a branch. It's like its own division or branch or whatever that's called. Anyway, interesting conversation about life in the 80s with Beckworth when he was later on in life, with Johnny Rowland, who was doing a interview show on satellites, so on satellite radio. Super cool. Let's see, this was Jocko talking about Marcinko. Gotta go watch that again because I do not remember listening to that. But we did talk about Marcinko earlier in the week when we were doing the flashback at the show, I think, or maybe the interview show on Monday. I was going through a bunch of the old interviews looking for looking for an interview to play. I think we ended up with the Marcinko story. So if you want to hear more about Richard Marcinko and the 5 times I hung out with him or met him, if you count the radio show 6 times or something like that, then go check out Monday's show. We got a show or a channel where we review stuff, and I reviewed a pond pump. So if you want to go check that out, go check out a review of a backyard pond pump. So if you've got a private water feature in your backyard and you've been wondering what 6-in-1 solution is there for both waterfall, pump, filter, and whatever the other 2 things are, then there's a pump for you. And it's under $400, I think. Also, here's a mop bucket. So I must have been looking at those videos for some reason. But that's a different channel. If you want to go check it out, feel free. Next up is Masad Ayub talking about gun semantics. So interesting. He's really talking about a lot of stuff there, not just what you'd think like semantics, like words in general, having conversations with other gun folks or in front of people who are gun agnostic, gun neutral, whatever you want to say, or having conversations with the antis, the people afraid or scared or that just hate guns. So that's what I kind of thought it would be, using words that are with intent around these people. But it ended up being more about self-defense and thinking about witnesses and what they hear and how you say things. Worth listening to, because Moss always has interesting stuff. It's just not what I thought it was going to be. It's been about an hour then. It's a lot of talking. So I need to drink some coffee again. Should I make you listen to a commercial? I don't know. Nobody's saying anything out there. So why don't we preemptively play this piece that I usually play for Patriot in the Dark at the end of the show.
Shit. Ninja? Ninja! Ninja!
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
That gives me a chance to drink some coffee and yawn and stretch, so that works out pretty good. Hopefully you don't mind listening to the intro to the old podcast. So next up is Costly Conversations. Podcast had Maj on. Maj Toure from Black Guns Matter. They had him on Sunday? No. Thursday? Some day that I was driving. I don't remember what day it was, but I was driving. So whatever day it was. It was Sunday, I think. So I ended up, at first he said the Costly Conversations podcast is on Rumble, I think. And so he said, I'm only going to play the first 15 minutes of this interview on YouTube, and then the rest of it will be over on Rumble. I was like, I don't care. So I went over to Rumble, but then it was like $1 to listen to it on Rumble. I don't like paying $1 to listen to something, so I wasn't going to listen to it over there. But then he ended up playing the whole thing on YouTube. So I was like, all right. So I listened to the whole thing. It was pretty decent. Listening to the story again. I don't know if the guy from Costly Conversations really doesn't know the story, or if he was hearing it for the first time, or if he was just listening, to get the story across or the information out. But interesting to hear the whole conversation or the whole story again. And now that it's a few years since the last time I heard Maj say the whole origin story of Black Guns Matter and its accomplishments, definitely interesting to hear the evolution of it all, and Maj's kind of evolution as what he is. I don't know what to call him, activist, I guess, promoter. So I think that, again, there's a lot of people doing stuff in different ways, and Maj has been fairly successful very successful at the way that he's doing it. So there's different ways to do things, but you could learn a lot by paying attention to what Maj got going on with Black Guns Matter, both in the his results, what he gets done, but also the way that he gets it done, like the machine that he created to make it happen. We'd be better off if we had a bunch of those machines out there. Not necessarily, they're not all going to be in Philadelphia, obviously. They don't all have to be about free gun education, but just the way that he's been able to do it all and do it well. Like, he's focused on free gun education in Philadelphia and elsewhere, but that mechanism could easily be put in place for something like what Faster Save Lives does, or what Tony's doing with the diversity shoot. Like, he's definitely got both. Maj has got both the results side. He's getting good work done. He's not just created a mechanism to create money. He's doing stuff with the money, but he's also created a great mechanism to fund his efforts. So I don't know if he considers himself successful or not, but it's definitely, of the options we've got on the playing field, if you're not paying attention to Black Guns Matter, then you're not paying attention to one of the most effective entities on the board. Speaking of effective entities on the board, we got Gizzard over here doing the Friday show. Of course, he was too lazy to do it today because he's vacationing in Oklahoma. People in Kansas take their hard-earned money and they take their vacation time and they go south to Oklahoma and hang out and enjoy luxury vacations in Tulsa. So I'm assuming it's too difficult for him to go live while he's in Tulsa. Maybe he doesn't have the kind of internet that's needed. But next week, I'm sure he'll be back talking about how the show was, hanging out with everybody and whatnot. But normally he does a show right before this show. I think Hillbilly did one. I didn't see it, though. Was Hillbilly doing a show before this? Now let's talk about tomorrow night, or last Saturday night. You've got the overnight. So that means this week will be the Mouse Party. DM Foss hosts these shows each week, or every other week. It's one or the other. So every other week it's the overnight, every other week it's the mouse party, but every week it's Saturday evenings, late night. So if you're interested in this show in the middle of the night, then you're definitely going to like the overnight, which is also, well, it's not quite late, is it? It's actually later than this. So I've put this show on in the middle of the night for a couple of reasons. The biggest one is because I value the night shift. I've worked the night shift a lot in my life. I value the people that do stuff in the middle of the night. It's often overlooked. It's always taken for granted. It's usually ignored, except for, oh, the night shift will do it. Or, why didn't the night shift do it? Right? Except for that, then nobody even pays attention to the night shift. So I do my show at night. I suspect a bunch of the people that are on our Patreon supporters are people that are up overnight, but not all of them. But we've historically done our live stuff in the middle of the night, unlike other people who do their stuff where it's easy for all the day people. But Foss is also a night shifter and someone who's awake in the middle of the night. So his shows are overnight. Now, usually it was Wednesdays was the mouse party, and then every other week was the overnight. But because of some personal stuff, he's kind of crowded everything into every Saturday. There's something going on now. It's just that he changes it up. So the big difference between the two shows is typically the overnight has a theme or a topic, and the mouse party doesn't. So this week will be the mouse party. You can show up. You can be part of the show. You can hang out and watch. You can hang out and chat in the text chat like people are doing here tonight. Or you can just join in and be part of the panel. And because it's the mouse party, it'll just be, topic of the night, topic of the day. And we'll see what happens. It's always a good time. And it's cool to have another person who values the overnight folks. And Maj put up a video called What is Black Guns Matter? A 44-second synopsis. Let's go ahead and watch that, see if it copyrights us.
What's up, Solutionaries? Maj right here, founder of Black Guns Matter and the Solutionary Center.
Hold on. I should not have done it that way because now it took me all the way to the top of the list. So let me try to do that again. Uh-oh. Yeah. Wait. No. Yeah. So let me try to do that again, but in a different window.
What's up, Solutionaries? Maj right here, founder of Black Guns Matter and the Solutionary Center. We offer basic firearms classes, conflict resolution, and a whole host of other skill sets that are beneficial to our communities all around America. We're able to do these classes because of your voluntary donations. We don't accept government funds. The people that choose to pay it forward to remove the financial barrier to entry are choosing to do so voluntarily. So you can support at givesendgo.com/solutionary. Give it whatever level you can afford to do. Repost the content. Let folks know that we have a community to save and we have to do it ourselves together. givesendgo.com/solutionary. Be safe, be solutionary.
Like I said before, Maj has it down. He's got a good, you don't have to like his style or not, but he's got it figured out. He's doing it well. It's great use of the platforms and effective everything, branding and organization and community building, and all to fund changes in Philadelphia, where constantly people are exploiting the situation in Philadelphia for whichever side you're on. Oh, look at everything's the problem in Philadelphia. Oh, look, Philadelphia's fault. Oh, look, even Philadelphia. So few people, if any, that I'm aware of are over there doing stuff other than Maj. Is my audio still working? Is everybody still getting it? Sound check. My mic has been glitching on me, and I'll be sitting here chatting for 10 minutes and then find out that I've been off air effectively. So that was still Saturday. Going back in time earlier in the day on Saturday, Never Enough Ammo, who's always doing his craziness over on his channel, does his goofiness on his geek channel. So if you're interested in toys mostly, and or every once in a while cartoons and movies and comic books and that kind of thing, pop culture from an old man's point of view, then check out Geek Fusion. Every once in a while I'll try to jump in there. I'll try to listen because that's a good time to get stuff Oh, there's Hillbilly. Hillbilly, do you have a show going earlier? I thought you did. Thanks for the sound check. Justin's out there also. Good evening. Did I say hey to Roy is out there? Good evening. So, like I say, usually if I'm working on something, because that's right after Suicide Prevention Saturday or right during Suicide Prevention Saturday. If I'm working on something, I'll usually be listening to Matt. But half the time I jump in there and chat with them all about whatever movies are coming up or movies we've seen and stuff like that. And then they talk about their toys. So the best thing that happens each week is Suicide Prevention Saturday. Normally, this is the first thing I talk about on the show so that it gets talked about, right at the beginning in case people are going to ditch out, that they hear it because it's the best. There's a couple, it's in the top 3 always. And depending on how you want to look at it, I'd say it's probably it is the most valuable effort that we could be doing as gun owners is learning how and to talk about and learning more about and learning how to talk about mental health awareness and suicide prevention, those 2 things. And not just giving them the words, but understanding what that's all about. And what Brooke does is offer a consistent Saturday afternoon project where she'll go live for usually less than a half an hour, sometimes less than 20 minutes, and she'll focus on a point or a topic or something you can do, an exercise, a perspective. It's a fun show because it's other than being focused on mental health awareness and suicide prevention and being more comfortable having those discussions and using those as tools in our inventory to have effective conversations with antis and with ourselves. Aside from that, she does, that focus, she doesn't have a theme or a topic or a structure, I guess I should say. She doesn't have like a format or a structure for her show. So she's very creative and her show will kind of adapt and react to whatever she's got going on. Brooke herself is an activist with with a role in multiple state and local level organizations, and is also a firearms instructor. So she's quite busy, not to mention being a mom. And so she's very busy and has a lot going on, and her show is consistent in spite of all that, which is in itself an example and an inspiration for those who might need it. What do I need? How can I do this if, so big and got so much resources or knows so many people in the industry or has been doing it for so long? There's just as many regular people doing regular work that's more valuable by a factor of 100. And Brooke is an example of that. Now, in addition to all that, her messaging, which is mental health awareness. So we talk about broken arms, we talk about broken legs, we talk about, like, I had a toothache for a while. Nobody cared that I was talking about my toothache. I could say how my glasses are bothering me, or I could talk about how I have a broken arm, or if I'm permanently affected in some way where I'm not, differently abled. We can talk about all that, different levels of comfort. But when we talk about our mental health, we somehow have or some kind of a resistance or a tendency to not do that. Mental health issues can come from like disease or like a cancers or, things that physically damage us. They can come from physical situations. Sports often give people mental issues. Occupations can give people physical issues with their brains, chemical issues with their brains, military situations, breaching charges and jumping out of things and falling over and getting in wrecks, certain sports, right? I already say sports. So there's things that can create mental issues that for some reason have a stigma. And that's unnecessary. That's unreasonable. It's unnecessary, and it's just a way of the way that the world has progressed or whatever. But it's used against us on a daily basis by the antis who suggest that anyone with any of those issues is no longer able, no longer capable. And while there are no, 100%, it's unfair and unjust for the antis to throw so many people under the bus and then take for granted and ignore all the work that's being done by people who have passion and concern for those people, again, in those occupations and in those physical situations where they have to deal with those challenges. So the antis will suggest that they'll blow off thoughts and prayers, because it's very cool to be anti-faith when you're on the left, and you're anti, individual freedom, and you're pro big state. You can't value individual faith in anything other than the state. So they have to throw off thoughts and prayers. And then they'll suggest that the gun owners have no answers for mental health. Well, fuck them in every single way, because we have so many issues here that we've addressed in so many different ways that it's frustrating as hell that they would suggest that we have nothing. And because gun owners aren't familiar with all the projects that are being done, they'll often go along with that bullshit premise that gun owners don't do nothing. Well, gun owners are doing a lot, and the one thing that ties it all together and weekly shines a light on it is Brooks Suicide Prevention Saturday. So there's nothing at the national level. Name anything at the national level that's focused on mental health awareness. You're only going to say Walk the Talk America, which is one organization with two dudes that do what they can. They're not nothing, but they're one organization that's two dudes, and the best they can do is what they can do. You don't see anything with the national level industry, and you don't see anything except for NSSF. What does NSSF do? Actually, nothing. So, yeah, I was thinking child safe. There's nothing at the mental health awareness. So we got a big zero, except for a lot of military, a lot of occupational, a lot of disease. What is that? What do you call it? Like the stuff that the mental health issues that are caused by disease, those people affected are often, organized by some sort of national level or maybe even international level, assistance group or awareness group. So there's lots of organizations that are doing stuff at the macro and at the micro level, I guess, and at the small level. And then there's Brooke, who's actually trying to shine a light on all of that and gives people the ability to have conversations about these topics, to normalize the topics, and to really bring the attention to where it belongs. Suicide prevention is an issue of a momentary, what would you say, like thought process, a momentary thing that someone's going through, a time of life that's stressful for somebody that passes. Very rarely is it a chemical imbalance that's persistent. It's usually just a momentary thing, and it's a crime. It's fucking a crime that we are in a place where we're not giving people the ability to have alternatives other than those dire consequences. I've watched a couple of things from Ed's manifesto. In fact, I'm going to bring them up right now for people who are watching this, either live or in the future. I'm going to go over to Instagram real quick and search for Ed's manifesto, which is, I guess it's Manifesto Radio Podcast is what it's called. And that's Ed Calderon, a Mexican federal police who eventually retired and is now traveling the U.S. and offering a lot of interesting instruction. But his Instagram page is freaking awesome. And this is a current or a recent post from from his Instagram. I can't play the audio because it's copyright me. But this is a red line and a blue line, and it's a 4-dimensional chart. So it's a chart that is expanding with time so that you can see the comparison between the red line. Got the hiccups. The red line is suicide, and the blue line is military action. So this is a chart that shows the cumulative death rates of active duty U.S. troops since 1980. So I can't rewind it, but I will try to see if I can refresh it. Are we still live? Are we getting good audio? Give me some audio check here. Let's see if I refresh it, what happens. Okay, so now you can see it started in 1980. By 1983, the suicide rate is massive, and we had nothing going on in the world, so the military action rate was almost nothing. And then we had the Gulf War, so we had a few deaths, and then you had some deaths during the war in the Gulf, I guess. That's 1991 only. Now you get up to 1997. There's really nothing happening in the Gulf anymore, so I don't know. That was just, military accidents probably. So now you get 2001, and you get the global war on terror starting, and you start to see actual deaths in combat of military personnel, and they reach something like the 5,000 level by about 2008. So there's a massive increase from like less than 1,000, way less than 1,000 in the hundreds each year, all the way up to like 6,000. And then it's pretty steadily 6,000 military deaths each year. And that's a bad statistic. It's not great, but it's what you would expect for a 20-year war, right? Now, take a look at that suicide rate. It's not exponentially growing, but it's consistently growing, doubling, and it's sickening. And that happens. It barely tapers, but by 2000, by when 2001 happens, the suicide rate is at 5,000 and growing each year. And then by the time the actual military deaths hit 5,000, the suicide rate is much closer to 10,000 each year. Of course, as it goes on, we get to the whole point where people start talking about the 22 a day, and that's when you get to the, I think, 12,000 a month or 12,000 a year. What does 22 a day come out to? So I think that's an interesting chart that shows the ratio between, or the comparison between suicides in military active duty and, deaths from actual something happens in the military. Now we'll go back and look at a second one that Ed posted. If this thing, will it let me? I'm going to figure out which screen I'm on. No. So we're going to go back. So that's sickening. I mean, that's a freaking sickening thing. But now let's look at this one. This is veterans and non-veteran suicide rate. So of the suicide rate in the United States, the blue line is the suicide rate for non-veterans, and it's fairly consistent at about 14.5 per 100,000. And then look at the red line, which is the veteran suicide rate. And they have the audacity to suggest that guns are the cause of this. Guns are the health problem in the United States. So this is showing, again, if this is working, this is showing a massive increase in veteran suicides, while the non-veteran suicide rate grows. It doubles in this amount of time, but this veteran suicide rate has always been larger, and it quadruples, whatever 6 times bigger is. It goes from essentially like 15,000 or 15 per to 20, 22. So quite a bit more than the non. So anyway, I just thought I'd post those two, since we're going to wait till Wednesday to post them. But again, it's all talking about Brooke, I think is what we were talking about. What happened? What did I do? Oh, I mixed up. I was supposed to be looking at my history, huh? And I'm not looking at my history anymore. So I must have hit back too many times, maybe. Nope, I just totally messed up. Let's go find my history again. It's going to be all weird now because I looked at a bunch of videos in a different order. But I believe we were taking a look at last Saturday at Suicide Prevention Saturday, and I was chatting up why Brooke's probably the strongest Second Amendment activist on the planet right now. But, maybe that's contestable. Maybe there's somebody that's doing more than Brooke. Let's see. Then we get Ron Wayne, no, Mac Man doing an unboxing from Ron Wayne. So if you haven't seen Ron Wayne's patches, that's what they look like. Then Matt, Never Enough Ammo again. Normally he just goes around complaining about the news or whatever, but in this case he went to the Chat GPT, so the Microsoft version of the robot AI, artificial intelligence, and he asked it why the Second Amendment exists and why it was important today, or why it is important today. And he just read the response, and basically that was a video. So the response was decent, and except for a part where it said like something like, and of course we need to have it, of course no right is absolute. It said one of them stupid lines. Aside from like some stupid caveats that it made, it hit a lot of the bullet points. It was actually pretty interesting to listen to. Now, Matt is definitely not somebody who cares about GPT or cares about the AI or interfaces with the AI. So I don't think he probably I know he didn't spend too much time worrying about how to ask the robot, because that is a big piece of it. You need to, if you want a good answer from someone, you need to ask them a good question, and that applies to the robots. If you just go up and ask a robot, why do airplanes fly? It doesn't know if you're a 6-year-old or a 16-year-old, or if you're a person with flying experience, or if you don't even know what an airplane is. So it attempts to give you a basic answer. But if you say, hey, robot, act like you're a airline pilot and tell me how an airplane flies. Or if you say, hey, robot, act like you're a engineer and tell me how an airplane flies. Or you say, hey, robot, you're a science teacher, tell me how an airplane flies. You're going to get 3 remarkably separate different answers from that robot. It's the same robot, but if you give it a caveat like, hey, you're a expert at this, give me an answer as an expert would give it to me, an expert speaking to other experts, you're going to get a different answer. It's capable of doing amazing stuff if you ask it the right question the right way. That's simplified, but I think you get the idea. So Matt just asked it kind of randomly or kind of basically, and it answered them pretty well for being a basic one. Now, is that any indication of AI's opinion of the Second Amendment? I don't know. It's an interesting question. It's too late in this show to get into it, but at what point when the robots take over, will they take the guns? Will they let us have the guns because they won't bother them? Will it be like saying, oh, the mosquitoes can keep their needles or whatever, but because they can't affect our armor. Like, if they're not worried about, because the guns can't hurt them, maybe they'll let us keep our guns, but maybe they won't. We'll find out. Then we have the Ask Gun Questions on Tuesday. What am I saying? On Saturdays, Tony, Simon, and Clover and I get together and answer gun questions. Clover is hanging out in Tulsa, so he's probably not gonna. So we'll see if Tony's available this week, and we'll be doing the same. I think we only answered. Did we even answer a question off the database? I think we answered all the questions that came in live again. We do that once in a while. I usually take the live questions first, and then we hit the answers that come into the website. But AskGunQuestions.com is a website I bought a long, long time ago. Here, why don't I let myself tell you about it? Right? Here you go. AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007. And since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions. There you go. All right, so that's enough commercials. That's pretty much the end of the week. Last week, Gizzard was in there. What am I missing? Hillbilly Up does a show on Saturday. I was probably watching it on the other computer, so it didn't show up in this one's history. I don't watch any of the military stuff on this computer, really. So Combat Story was epic Combat Story. It's a really, really good one. I can go look at that in my subscriptions, maybe. So Combat Story is the guy who's an Apache helicopter pilot, and then he went into the CIA, and he was interviewing a guy who was a Marine officer. Oh man, super interesting though. I think he was a Marine officer. Super interesting, and then it ended up being a two-parter. So this was the second part of the two-parter. So two-parters they're lame, but they're also awesome because you get so much more time with a person, but they're lame because you only get half of it and you got to wait a week for the other half. So this was the conclusion of that. What am I looking for? I was going to find out the Forge of Freedom has been doing the dog walking. Well, the guy who's a dog trainer, and they've been having they had a two-part there as well. So this was the second part of a two-part there. I was looking for the other military interview show. Dragon Man's coming close to being the end of his season. So Dragon Man's been posting all kinds of cool stuff. Mostly on Instagram is where I follow that one. Let's see. So Team House had... It's just easier to jump over to Team House's channel. So these guys were a Ranger and a Green Beret, and they interview people live. And this last week they had on... Eventually it'll pop up here. Oh yeah, Pete Blabber. They had a guy from Delta Force. He's a commander with Delta Force. Super interesting, because these guys did stuff back in the day before, well, back in the day. So super good interview there. Let's see. Then we had Combat Story, and then what's the last one? Oh, Mic Drop was... Oh, Mic Drop, I think, was also the second. I'm not going to find it. Mic Drop doesn't always show up in these for some reason. But he was the second part of something too, wasn't he? But anyway, these shows are shows that I watch on my other computer, so they don't show up on this history. So we'll drop it there. M. Gabriel is out there. Right on. Good afternoon. Wood says, I'll write more gun questions. Right on. Thanks for that. I guess I can stop screen sharing. We'll go back to puppy button here. I'll put this over the puppy button so nobody has to see it. Oh, that's not working. I'll move the camera. Everybody likes looking at the burrito. Nobody likes looking at the burrito ends. All right, so with that, we'll say thanks to everybody who's watching and listening. What am I missing? We'll be adding stuff to the calendar. I've been busy with the side project, so as that tapers off, we'll be adding stuff to the calendar and be adding that to the shows. This week we did the the Instagram show on Wednesday. We did an interview flashback. We mentioned going back and talking about an interview with, or a couple of times we met up with Marcinko over the years. And then this next Monday, we've got Jeff Knox on again. So Jeff joined us for a couple of 3 hours during Every Second It Matters show this year, or this week. What am I saying? This month. But Monday, we'll have Jeff back on and we'll chat with him. He's running for the NRA board. He's willing to do what no one wants to do, attempt to run for the board so he can kind of get rid of Wayne. And everybody agrees that's what needs to be done. Well, a lot of people agree that's what should be done, that's a good step, but nobody is putting any effort at all into doing anything about it. And Jeff and a couple of other people are willing. And of course, they could use support, but they know they're fighting a fight that's unpopular and frustrating, as I'm saying. I just imagine what it's got to be. But we'll talk about that. And also, he's got amazing perspective from being in the fight for so long. So I'll actually try to go back through my 3 hours of, well, I'm not going to listen to the thing again, but I'll try to remember, for what I can of our conversation over the 3 hours and come up with some bullet points to chat about with him. But looking forward to that. The week after, we have Alex Ulian from Forge for Freedom, and lawyer from Indiana. We'll be chatting with him the Monday after, and then depending on if I can line more people up, I'd like to have a couple more people on. But we'll be backing those up. If I can't get people on Mondays, we'll be backing those up with rewind episodes from previous interviews. Woods is asking, didn't Amanda Suffolk try for the board? Yeah, she tried and won. She's on the board, but I haven't paid attention to Second Amendment Foundation's content since a month, well, for a while now. So I have no idea. She's I don't know if she's on YouTube anywhere besides the Play Society podcast. So I haven't followed. She probably does a lot on Facebook. I know she's a big fan of Facebook. But she hasn't been on with Cheryl Todd or anything. That's where I'd probably see her. Let's see. Otherwise, I think we're wrapping this one up. So I'll quit wrapping it up. And let's see. We'll say thanks again to our Patreons. It says right down here. Our Patreons make it possible for us to spend time on projects like these. Thank you. And then that's a link to the Patreon place. Again, essentially people that are subscribing to our projects, since we've been doing this since 1997. We don't just do one thing. There was no YouTube back in the day. We create content and put it online to help normalize guns, to help show gun people how much more there is to do out there without being weird or sensationalizing it or anything like that. So we really do appreciate the people that allow us to do this. It's not something that I can get sponsorship for. I usually talk crap about the grip angles and the imported stuff that we don't need. And, the people that are willing to go, hey, yeah, everything's great all the time. I don't really care about all that. You can buy whatever you want. Don't buy whatever you want. Live with one gun. Live with 100 guns. I could care less. Our rights matter. Working together as gun owners, we become better citizens. Like, we become better civically. Like, we become more aware. And that gives us the citizenry, right? The constituents. It gives us more power. So as gun owners, not only are we fighting for our hobby, we're fighting for our property, we're fighting for our rights, we're fighting for our future kids and their grandkids' rights, whatever that is, perpetuity or whatever. But hopefully we're leading the way for other elements of our society to say, wait a minute, the gun owners were able to say, no, we should too. We've already seen it with the potheads. There's recreational and medicinal marijuana in like a chunk of the states, with most of the states, right? So that was done by potheads. Like, I don't think there was any big industry behind that. I don't think there was any big influence behind that, other than a bunch of people all had the same opinion about stuff, and a bunch of people who had the other opinion didn't show up, didn't care. So it's not about right or wrong. It's about what can be done when a bunch of people have the same opinion about something. And as gun owners, we could be leading the way by, one, getting these people off our backs, but also showing just society in general, right, the culture out there, that the 14th richest person on the planet doesn't get to boss us around just because he has a bunch of money, that he has unpopular opinions, and he can't just pay to have those unpopular opinions pushed on other people. And really, beyond him, beyond that one dude, there's very little support for this. There might be a couple other rich people who have that same opinion, but very little popular support for this. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and there's a lot of people who hate concepts that just are vaporware, that don't exist. So our real challenge is how we can work together to eliminate that misunderstanding, to eliminate that unawareness. And half of that battle is just going out and having fun with guns and sharing that. Anyway, I don't know what I was ranting on there, but I'm ranting, so I'm ending it. We'll cut it here. The co-host is supposed to jump in, do some kind of a co-host dance. Well, you know what I could do? This will get him going. I bought this, and it turns out he likes fiddling with it. I don't know what he wants to do with it, but he wants to do something to it. But I got this stuffed iguana. Oh, look, he fell right back asleep. A stuffed iguana wouldn't even get him going. I bought this thing and I had it sitting in the van. I was like driving along going, that dog's not bothering me. I wonder what's going on. I wonder if he's sick, if he's got something wrong with him because he wasn't bothering me. And I look over and he was being mean to this lizard. Let's just say he was being mean to this lizard. And ever since then, he's just wanted more and more of this lizard. So right now we're ending with the puppy being manhandled by a lizard. He's that tired, and he doesn't even care what this lizard's doing to him. Look at that lizard's doing. He don't care. Well, maybe if the lizard did one of these. Here, people go, what does that dog do? Here, I'll be sleeping. This dog is playing the role of me. I'll be sitting there sleeping, minding my own business, and this is what this lizard will be my dog. This dog right here. By the way, see what's happening? He's acting like he's not wagging his tail. But I'll be sleeping like this dog. This dog will go, what's that guy doing? Sleeping? And then he'll do this. He'll just get in there, nuzzle in there, and I'll do that pretty much. Hey, what's going on? And then I'll try to move around. But what he'll do is he somehow gets that little tiny nose right into my neck. So it's essentially like giving me some kind of wet willy. And it's impossible to sleep with a dog giving you a wet willy. So, yeah, little insight as to what this dog does when I'm sleeping sometimes. But it turns out if you get a lizard to give him a wet willy, he likes it. He don't even care. No, he don't care at all. So we'll just end with this lizard being the co-host with the dog butt. All right. Well, this ended in a weird way. We'll end this one.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.
He was acting. We rehearsed that skit with the lizard earlier. He was just acting.
Shit. Ninja? Ninja! Ninja!
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is